My name is Ira Lobanok, and I'm a co-founder of music community Porichka here in Lviv. We have with us today Fiona Blum. I will start quickly of housekeeping. So I just wanted to say that during this session, please feel free to raise your hand and ask questions so that we don't have all the questions at the end. If there is something that you don't understand or maybe need some more details on, make sure you raise your hand and we will give you the microphone during the session, okay? If you don't have your questions during the session, then you can, of course, do some at the very end. Our session is going to be an hour and a half because our guest is very busy and we will need to let her go at one point. I'm really happy that Fiona was able to be with us tonight, but for Fiona it is 11:30 in New York. And I'm happy to introduce you to Fiona Blum, who is 30 plus years music industry veteran, who runs a global talent agency, The Bloom Effect, based in New York, with expertise spanning promotions, management, marketing, and event planning. She has previously operated successful hip-hop labels and a live production agency. Fiona Blum specializes in discovering raw talent and developing careers for recognized figures in music industry and entertainment. And I really like the slogan that she has on her email. It says, "If life doesn't give you a door, climb out." I just wanted to say that it was great to meet you, Fiona, during Celtic Connections in Scotland, I think 2 years ago. It was very inspiring to meet you at that point. And I'm super happy that you were open to be with us today. And now the floor is yours. We're really
Thank you.
Your story.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here and speak to you all and share my story and give you all these great tips and examples and, basically share some gems about building artists' careers from the ground up. It's definitely been a wild ride, 35 years. I think it's almost going on 40 years, actually. So thank you, Irina. Thank you, America House. And thank you, Porichka. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. But yes, so my name is Fiona Blum. I'm originally from London, England. And I started my career, I like to say that I never chose to be in the music industry. Like everyone always said, how did you get into the industry? What made you decide you wanted to work in this business? I always say I never decided I wanted to be in this business. I never chose this business. It chose me, basically. It chose me. I just woke up one day and I was doing it. I hadn't really thought about it. I was already in it. And I'll explain all of that process for you. So growing up in London, I had a really strong ear for music. I would sit on my dad's knees listening to the radio with my family. And 3-4 days later, at 2 years old, I would literally hum the song in its entirety. So like the whole tune from the radio 2 days ago at 2 years old. So my family, my parents were like, wow, this is really atypical. It's very, unusual. And friends of theirs said to my parents, why don't you take her, to study lessons of some sort, like music lessons, take her for maybe starting with the piano. So that's what I did. So at the age of 4 years old, I started playing the piano. And then they suggested, pick up a second instrument because it's always good to have two instruments. So I chose the violin. And I was doing really well on both, piano, violin. I was practicing 6-7 hours a day. At the age of 9, 10, 11, I was starting to win piano competitions. I was doing recitals. This is all in London. And then I studied at the Royal Academy School of Music, which is really tough to get into. And I was doing great. And at that age of 11, 12, I told my parents, I want to do this for real. I want to do this as seriously and professionally and travel around the world playing music. That's basically what I wanted to do. And I told them that at the age of 11. And I never changed that feeling, that desire, up until my late teens. So as I was playing the violin, I started getting really good at the violin as well. And then they said to me, they suggested, my musical training, the teachers and the guides, the people that were basically studying with me, helping me get better. basically recommended that I choose one over the other. So not really decide to not, quit violin or piano, but to basically choose one that was like the one that you were really going to go for and stick with forever. So I ended up choosing the piano, and I will tell you why I have a regret. They always say never have any regrets. You can have regrets in this business. You can have regrets in your journey, as long as the regrets don't get you down, as long as the regrets don't take hold of your life, right? So, I did regret choosing the piano over the violin, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. So I went with the piano. I got full scholarships after studying in London. I got full scholarships to America to study in university. I wanted to go to the Juilliard School. That was the biggest, most, probably the most prestigious university, the Juilliard in New York. The other prestigious school was the Curtis Institute. So those were the top choices that I had. Everything else under that was like Oberlin School of Music, the Peabody Institute, Berkeley. I got into all of those schools. I got into all of those schools with scholarships at the age of 16 years old. But I really wanted the Juilliard and or Curtis. I didn't get accepted to Curtis. I did get accepted to Juilliard without any financial help. So being New York's an expensive place to live, I decided probably not best to go to New York if I don't have any financial assistance, and I didn't want to get myself in debt at the age of 17, 18 years old. So I chose Philadelphia College of Performing Arts, which was near to New York and really one of the next best schools. I mean, it was up on par with Oberlin, Peabody, Berkeley. It was absolutely one of the top places. So I had a full scholarship to Philadelphia College of Performing Arts as a piano performance, music performance degree. And I moved to Philadelphia at 16 years old. And the training was super intense. I mean, it was like 7-8 hours a day. Everybody that was in the program were from Korea, from China, Taiwan, from Venezuela, top in their field, and it was easy for them. Like for me, it wasn't easy. For me, I had to play and practice and discipline myself and, do the studies, do music theory, do music harmony. But some of these Korean students, they could literally get away with 2 hours a day. And I was like, that's not fair, right? It's like, why do I have to practice 7-8 hours a day to be at the same level as they are practicing 2 hours a day? So in other words, I was really, really, really pushing and forcing, and I was starting to burn out, and I was starting to be miserable. And also, my music teachers and my piano professors, they humiliated me in classrooms, in chamber classes and recital halls. I would just be, intimidated, ridiculed, humiliated, and abused, verbally abused. So at 18, I realized Philadelphia wasn't the place for me anymore. So I decided to transfer to another music school called University of Maryland. They had a really great music program as well. So I lasted there about another 1.5 years. And honestly, I burned out so much that I just decided I'm going to quit. That maybe the music performance wasn't for me. And so I quit. And there's a few lessons to learn from this, just going on the journey that I've talked about so far, being the age of 4 to 19 years old, now knowing I've quit. Again, I might have failed. I might have decided to quit, but I didn't quit in the sense that I just threw in the towel and gave up on life. There's 2 different types of quit, right? There's a quit where you decide you're quitting that and you're refiguring things and retooling things and thinking about what's going to work for you and what will make you happy. That's one way of quitting. The other quitting is the not good way of quitting, when you decide, I can't deal with life anymore. I quit. I'm depressed. I'm this, I'm that. And then that's bad, right? The other quit is more like you learn from what makes you happy, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, right? So let's go back to the reason why I said I had regrets early on about quitting violin and really going hardcore into piano. If I would have stayed with violin, right, because you make choices in life, right, and I'm very young at the time, I realized that choice to really go forward with piano only, leaving the violin to the side and not really practicing violin anymore and sort of leaving it alone and just focusing on piano, and theory and harmony and just doing the stuff in college that you do. Here's the reason why I realized quitting the violin was not a good idea. Had I have stayed with violin, the stakes are not as high. Piano is a very lonely career. It's a very lonely instrument. With the piano, you are stuck playing by yourself. You're in a practice room on your own. When you go out and do recitals, you're on your own. Yes, you can play with a symphony orchestra as a special guest, but basically as a concert pianist, it's a very, very, very isolated, lonely, and very arduous, disciplined lifestyle. Violin, on the other hand, is very social. Violin, you can play with an orchestra. You can play with a chamber group. You can play with a quartet. You can play with a sextet. You can find your way as a violinist. And even if you're not first or second or third chair in an orchestra, you can still find a way to make a very good living as a violinist and also end up teaching. Yes, you can teach doing piano as well, but my head wasn't really thinking about teaching back then. Then when I'm in my 20s, I didn't want to be teaching. That doesn't sound sexy. That wasn't cool to me, right? I either wanted to be on stage or wanted to do something else in the industry that wasn't teaching. So working for record labels, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why not the best decision, quitting the violin. And who knows? I mean, I don't know if maybe today, all these years later, that I'd still be a successful violinist, first chair, second chair, or professor, or, chairing some major school. You just don't know what life throws you. You never know what is on your journey or what you get in your path, but you can know what your immediate path is. And realizing hindsight, looking back, my immediate path, if I would have focused on violin, yes, I could have had a nice career, at least for 10 years. Maybe I would have burnt out, maybe not. So I ended up quitting music. So I took about a year off. When I quit the music performance, I was about 21. I'm still young enough. It's probably the age of you all. I think Irene told me that you guys are all between the age of 18 and 35. So I would imagine there's a lot of young people in the audience, online and physically in the America House right now. So I would say, when I was 20, 21, which is still a very, very, very young age, you've got your whole life ahead of you to figure things out. I realized back then I needed a break to basically figure out who Fiona Blum was. I didn't know anything about me. I'd been playing the piano, playing violin, practicing, studying so intensely for so many years that I never really had a social life, that I never really had friends that I could go camping with or play, netball with, or, swimming classes or ballet or any of that stuff. I never really did that, right? So I had to figure out who I was. So I ended up going on a kibbutz because I figured, well, I don't need money for a kibbutz. Kibbutz in the Middle East and Israel, they send you out, you're picking grapes, you're cleaning toilets, you're on the orchard, you're in the kitchen, and you're just really figuring out your life, right? I was soul searching like everybody does at that age. And by the way, people still soul search still to this day. You could be 60 and still soul search. You could be 50, you could be 80, you could be 30, 40. It doesn't matter how far along you are. Soul searching and refiguring things out and reinventing yourself should always be something that you always spend some time with. So it's kind of like perspective. It gives you perspective. It gives you character. If you take a little time out, and I don't mean quit your job or quit doing what you do or what you love, it just means time out to maybe meditate, to maybe retool some things that might not be working, that used to work that aren't working now. Because, we're in a technological revolution where things are going by the speed of light. Things are going so, so, so fast. So when you're moving really, really fast, you don't get that chance to reflect or sit back and breathe and soak in what you've done. And that's really, really important. And I never did that. I just moved so fast all the time that until I took that break to go to Israel for 6 months, I never did that. And I've never done it since, by the way. So Israel was very interesting for me. I ended up touring all over the Middle East. I went to Egypt. I went to Jordan for a couple of weeks. I was in, where else did I go? Turkey. I just traveled all around. And while I was all around these different places, I made some incredible friends. I started listening to music that really got me excited and inspired. Because remember, I started out as a classical musician, right? So I came from Rachmaninoff and, Prokofiev and Beethoven and Chopin and Mendelssohn and Scriabin and, Schumann and Mozart. So I never really had any other upbringing or listening to other music. I mean, I did listen to some other stuff that was happening in London at the time, which was the Sex Pistols and punk rock and the Clash and all that. But I had to do that secretly, right? I couldn't really publicly do anything with it or go to clubs or anything like that. So in the Middle East, I started experiencing Middle Eastern sounds and Arabic music and all these atonal sounds and Eastern, Middle Eastern kind of music that was fusing together with jazz or hip hop or reggae. And I was like, it blew my mind. So I knew when I heard all this music, I knew I wanted to work doing something in promoting that kind of music or managing artists that play that music or developing artists' careers. Because I'm 21, 22, right? In Israel, still young, figuring, well, what am I going to do when I come back to England or if I go back to America? What am I going to do? So Israel and traveling the Middle East really sort of grounded me and provided me with the tools and the resources and the education, because education is really, really important, and the networking. It provided me with all of those things that could allow me to then figure out what is going to make me passionate about something, what's going to get me excited, what's going to get me getting ticked off and not ticked off, but ticking again. Like, what's that thing that will just make me, love the music again, right? Because I got really, really burnt out and didn't want to play anymore. So that was it. That was the medicine that I needed. That was the break that I needed. So I could have come back to London. This is 6 to 8 months later in the Middle East. My parents were like, where are you? There's no social media. There's no cell phones. I basically disappeared. My parents didn't hear from me for 7 months, which is scary. I can imagine I gave them grief and headaches and worry, so much worry, right? So anyway, I decided, was I going to go back to London or should I try to go to America? And my dad at the time took a job in Atlanta, doing some architectural project and a landscaping project. And my mom stayed behind in London, raising my other brothers and sister. And my dad was like, you can either go back to London, figure things out, or go to Atlanta and figure it out there, stay with me and decide what you want to do. So this is now 1989, 1990. So I decided to go to Atlanta because I figured I'd always wanted to come to New York. I always wanted to get to New York. I always wanted to have a career in America somehow. So I came to Atlanta. I decided, well, I studied music. I'm not doing music anymore. Let me figure out what I can do that's close to music that I don't have any experience in. I don't have any academia because I never really studied academics other than literature and languages. So what could I do? So I literally went down the line of degrees. And I stumbled upon speech communications. So I thought, that's an interesting degree. I've got the gift of gab. I can do that. I can do speeches and write stuff and be a good orator and, be dynamic and have good phonetics. And I speak well and I enunciate well. I'm like, let me figure out speech communications. I think that's going to be a breezy degree to go through. So I chose speech communications and my minor was in theater. And again, because I thought, well, music, theater, it's all connected. The arts, I'm obviously talented. I'm obviously a creative. So I decided, let me do a minor in theater and a minor in broadcast journalism. So Georgia State University, that was where I went to school, got the degree in speech communications. And they happen to have the biggest college radio station in the country, WRAS 88.5, biggest college station in the country. So I fancied myself a DJ, a radio personality. I thought I got the personality. I've got the, the voice. I've got the, the knowledge in music now, and I can learn as I go. And I'm, easy to train and work hard and all the things that you need, right, to make it in, an area of the industry or the business that you can climb up and get ahead. So I fancied myself, get into college radio and maybe have a radio broadcasting degree or radio broadcasting career, I should say, as a radio personality or as a music director or as a program director or marketing promotions. Really, I wanted to be on the air because remember, I came from being on stage, right? My personality had to be fame. I was chasing fame. I was wanting to be famous. I wanted to be a celebrity since the age of 4. I always wanted the spotlight on me, right? So I thought, well, I want to be on the radio. I don't want to be behind the scenes on radio. I'll learn it all, but I really want to be on the radio with a show, eventually be on every day, blah, 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 right? So I walked into the college station. I basically told them they need me. There was a show called Best of Britain. I had a very thick accent back then because I just moved from London. And, I said, you've got a Best of Britain show, all this British pop, British rock, and it's hosted by Americans. I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. So I talked the talk, got myself in as a co-host on the Best of Britain show. And that was like a Saturday afternoon on college radio, 88.5. And that show just took off. Then they said to me, do you want to fancy doing another show? So I chose another show that I thought, well, you know what? I love jazz music. I trained classically. I know a lot about jazz. Let me do this jazz show. It was called All About Jazz. So I started doing an afternoon jazz show. That became wildly popular. The radio, the phones were lighting up. That's when they had radio, the console board with all the requests coming in. I don't think they have those requests to call in anymore. I think everything's automated or done through AI or online. But anyway, the phones were lighting up like crazy. And they saw that I had value on that college station. So then they said, well, what else do you want to do? So I was like, I'll read the news. So I was their newscaster for 2 minutes. So basically I'm trying to say, be as helpful as you can be and be as open to, volunteering yourself. I was young, I knew it wasn't paying me any money because it was college radio. It was volunteer. All the people working at college radio, they're college kids, right? Your university, there's no money there. You don't get paid, at least not in America. So you volunteer yourself. But I guess I'm trying to say that that's really good when you're young to be open and to volunteer, to opt into as many areas of the business that you can. So yes, I wanted to be a famous DJ, but that didn't mean I shouldn't learn about how it works behind the scenes in programming, behind the scenes in music selection. What does the music meetings look like on the weekly day, the weekly calls? What does, advertising look like in radio? What does the promotion and marketing look like? So I got to learn about all of that stuff in radio, right? Ticket giveaways, orchestrating meet and greets with the bands that were coming through town, all the touring acts, working with the labels, working with the regionals, working with managers. And when the artists were coming through town, you're dealing with their tour managers. So I started getting really, really good at that. So I realized whilst I was not getting paid on the radio, I'm going to just start doing local promotion. And because the radio was 100,000 watts, my name was getting out there, right? Because it was Fiona Blum on the radio, people started to recognize me. So I was that local celebrity. So I started getting hired to do local venue promotion. And then I started managing local bands. This is all on my own, really doing it as I went, learning as I went. And all of a sudden, because the station was so big and because my name was getting out there and because my shows were getting popular, I got recruited to commercial radio. Star 94 gave me the big break, I guess you want to call it. I guess you could call it the big break. Now, it wasn't on the air every single day. It was doing fill-ins on commercial radio, but they offered me a job as the morning show gopher, which would just run and do like the remotes and do like the, production reels and assist the morning show hosts and really just make myself handy in as many areas as I could. And I learned a lot from the Star 94 morning show. And from there, they recruited me to assistant music director. So I would all day long listen to music and music meetings. I would deal all day long with record labels. Next thing you know, because it was a powerful radio station in a top 10 market, Atlanta, top 10 in the US, New York, LA, Chicago, DC. Atlanta was pretty high up there. So record labels started giving me, prizes and gifts and, hey, dinners with the band, or, private box seats or merchandise or cool jackets and things like that. So it was a really, really fun time. And now I'm at the age of about 23. So here I am on Star 94 doing that, also still doing my local promotion with the venues, doing some management and just gaining as much knowledge and as much experience as I could, just signing myself up for everything, just really not saying no, showing up to everything, really not saying no. And you can do that when you're young, right? You've got the energy, if you've got the charisma, you've got the good attitude, and the people like you, that goes a long way. And the experience comes, right? If you don't have all that experience yet, but you've got all those other ingredients, the experience comes. And as long as the people like you and you're getting along and you're building those relationships and you're getting the knowledge in and you've got the education and you're learning as you go, that's a beautiful thing. So from there, I guess I started getting a little bit too, my ego got a little in the way because I started realizing, hey, I'm getting hot over here. Like Fiona Blum is like the hot commodity. People know me, people like me, I'm getting famous here in Atlanta. So I don't want to say it was going to my head, but at 23, 24, I realized that I should be doing better financially, that I'm starting to be taken advantage of. I'm popular. People know me, people trust me. I've got an audience. I should be making more. I should be getting better opportunities. Now, ego should not get in the way. Ego should never get in the way because you should never get full of yourself. You should never start to treat people like you are better than them. You should always have humility everywhere that you go, every step along the way. Always be respectful and always realize and treat people as if you want to be treated that way, the same way. And, I don't want to say I'd mistreated people because I wasn't a bad person. It's just that my ego got the best of me. And I started getting a bit too smart for my own good, a bit of a smarty pants, a bit of a, smart ass, so to speak. But you learn from that, right? You're 24. Most people at that age that are doing well in their scene at the top, get a bit of an attitude. So I learned from that and I ended up getting fired from the station. And when I realized when you're fired locally in a market like that, it's very difficult to get another radio gig in the market. They basically blackball you from radio. So that wasn't good. And I realized, well, maybe it's the end of my radio career, which was very depressing because I loved it. But then community radio knocked on my door. Again, it wasn't really much money and it wasn't like a commercial station and it didn't have the 100,000 watts of college radio, but it was decent enough that I thought, well, if they offered me this daily show, which they did, I can start to really regroup and get myself back on everybody's radar and, walk myself into commercial radio again or in another market. That was my idea. Get myself heard every single day and then go to another market that might hire me. So I was just open to wherever that could be. Was it Jackson, Mississippi? Was it San Francisco? Was it Birmingham, Alabama? Maybe it was back in London in the BBC or wherever it was. I was very, very open. So that's another thing you need to learn from this is just be open to opportunities. Because even though you might think, well, I'm living in Europe, I'm in Eastern Europe, it's really here that I need to get my, next job. No, I mean, honestly, you should be thinking, no, I'm open to a possibility in Taiwan. I'm open to a possibility in, Cambodia. I'm open to a possibility in Toronto, Canada. Like you go where the love is, you go where the support is and where the opportunities are. And sometimes the opportunities aren't always in front of you. Sometimes the opportunity isn't local. It's not even regional. Sometimes it's not national, but it can be global if you put yourself out there and you're willing to take the risks. And I've taken so many risks in my career. So I'm going to go, I'm speaking a lot about early stuff. I need to really get into the meat of it all because there's so many amazing things that I did throughout my career, especially after leaving Atlanta, moving to New York. So I want to talk about that part of my career. So I was WRFG 89.3 was the community radio station. I was getting a lot of love. I was doing really, really well. I had to adjust. I had to adapt. That station was very urban. Now, remember, I started at college radio. I had the Best of Britain rock show, right? I was doing rock and pop. Then I did a jazz show. Then when I was at commercial radio, it was adult contemporary. So it was very like, you know, Bonnie Raitt and, Rick Astley and Bryan Adams, you know, back then. It was very, very, very mainstream. Rod Stewart, right? Very, very mainstream. So WRFG came along and I took it, but it was completely reggae, world music, Afrikaan, hip hop, and R&B, right? So I had to suddenly, change gears, shift gears, throw myself in and learn as I went. But I learned quickly because, again, I'm easy to adapt. You know, I love music, all kinds of music. And I think being in Israel and hearing all that incredible hip hop and Middle Eastern and world and, you know, the reggaeton, I think it equipped me to just being very, very open to different sounds. And living in Atlanta at that time in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, the R&B scene, the hip hop scene was just coming up. So I was starting to immerse myself in that scene. So yeah, so I got a very, very popular show and I started breaking artists like Outkast and, you know, Little John very early on and, you know, Naughty by Nature and Souls of Mischief and Ice-T and NWA and, you know, Farside. These are all on the hip hop tip. And then, you know, RuPaul, you know, the drag queen, you know, and all of a sudden, a lot of things were coming my way locally. I was getting, you know, put onto MC shows and doing, you know, PR for big events and things like that. And then the big break came. And this is what the big break was. EMI Records at the time, EMI Chrysalis in New York, the president would come down to Atlanta because he had signed a bunch of Atlanta artists. He'd signed a rock band called Follow for Now. He signed a producer called Dallas Austin. He signed Arrested Development, which is a hip hop, you know, soul group. He signed another artist called Joy. So he was back and forth to Atlanta all the time, the president of EMI Chrysalis, Daniel Glass. So he saw me in a club, you know, just doing my thing. And honestly, he had no idea who I was. I'm local, you know, and he just loved how I moved. I guess he saw me as the white chick, you know, in a black club, you know, it was a hip hop club, a black club. He saw me as a woman, you know, weaving in and out of this like hip hop space, talking and befriending all these rappers and, you know, and he was dumbfounded. He was baffled. He was like, what's your story? Like, how did this happen? And I basically just told him, listen, the urban community, the hip hop community has really embraced me. You know, the urban community loves me. Like I got more love with the urban culture in Atlanta than I was getting in the rock world, than I was getting in jazz and pop. And this urban hip hop R&B community was just starting to bubble. And because I was there from the ground up, I was part of that bubble of a movement that was being created. So I was known for the early stages of Outkast's career, the early stages of Funk Jazz Cafe, the early stages of the venue, you know, Yin Yang, the early stages of, you know, Arrested Development's career and you know, So Def, which was Jermaine Dupri and LaFace Records. So I was there for all of that. And I was friends with all of those people. So it was kind of a bit of luck, timing, right, which is everything, throwing yourself in and not being afraid, being unafraid, you know, being fearless, because I was very much the white person, not just the woman, and not just the white woman, you know, the white person, the white woman, just throwing myself into stuff that was, it didn't feel foreign, but it was foreign, right? But then as you keep going and you do it, and it's second nature and you're genuine, they start to treat you like you're one of them. So it felt very natural to me. So with all that said, Daniel Glass offered me the job at EMI Chrysalis. I wasn't even thinking about it. It was like a fluke. I was quite happy locally. I was killing it locally. I was on top of it. You know, I had my daily show. I was local promo. I was doing these big events. I was emceeing shows. I was famous in Atlanta. Famous. Fiona B was everywhere, ubiquitous. And I wanted something bigger, even though I hadn't thought about it. I was meant to be bigger. I was meant to have global domination, world domination, right? I had to have been something bigger, because if I grew up playing the piano at the age of 4 and 5, there's something that was a gift in me. You know what I mean? You recognize those gifts and you don't lose those gifts. You just have to make sure that you harness that and that you develop that, and that you don't lose sight of why you were sort of put on this earth, right? My raison d'etre. So I knew when Daniel Glass said, hey, how would you like to come to New York to do marketing, and promotion at EMI Chrysalis? I said yes, immediately. I didn't blink. I just didn't blink. So he left, he went back to New York. It wasn't as easy as it sounds. He basically gave me his number. He said, talk to my receptionist, because people had receptionists back then. This is 1993, end of 93. He said, talk to my receptionist, my assistant, she'll put you through, she'll get you an interview, come up to New York, you'll meet everyone, and we'll go from there. So, okay, that's what I did. But guess what? That call and that, we didn't even have emails back then. Remember, it was just phoning and sending letters, right? Or seeing people in person. I literally must have phoned that assistant maybe 15 times. I finally, on the 15th time, got through. She got me the interview. I flew up to New York on my own dime, because nobody was paying my way. So I paid my way to come up. I luckily had a friend I could stay with. I had an interview that started at 9 a.m. It didn't finish until 6 p.m. I literally met and chatted with everyone from the president all the way down. Vice president, head of legal, head of marketing, head of promotion, head of video production, head of art direction, head of creative, head of publicity, head of, A&R. Every single step along the wheel, every cog along that wheel that makes a label tick and makes things move at a record label when you sign and put records out. I met with every single department. And I was sweating bullets. I'm now 26 years old, almost 27. First time I'd ever had an interview like this. I'd never, aside from the commercial radio station in Atlanta, I'd never had an interview of this magnitude. But again, I've got the gift of gab. I've got the personality. I believed in myself. You have to have the confidence, and you just do it. You just throw it in there and you take the challenge. And at the end, at 6 o'clock, I left EMI Chrysalis. I went back to my friend's home. She's like, how did it go? I was like, I don't even know. I don't even know how to gauge it. I don't even know. I want to say I got the job, but I want to know what were people thinking of me, because I had no national experience. The job was national marketing. I had no national experience. So I finally go back to Atlanta. I didn't even think twice. I'm like, I don't even know if that gig was meant for me. I'll just continue being the king or queen of Atlanta and just, eventually get to the top of my game and go into radio, parallel move into like a different market, secondary market in Georgia or the South or California or wherever it's going to be. I'll eventually get there and be a top radio person by the age of 30. So that was my goal. Didn't think twice. I got the call. I got a call 2 weeks after my interview. Hey, the job is yours. Do you want it? I was like, yeah. And then I didn't even think to say, how much is the salary? Because I was so excited. But then I realized, oh, and what's the pay? And then they told me, and the pay was twice what I was making in Atlanta, twice. Now, could it have been more? Probably. But because I didn't really have an experience doing the national promotion, I didn't care. I was like, I'm taking this. So they gave me the biggest goodbye party, the biggest send-off I've ever had in my life. People still talk about my send-off. Outkast performed. Pebbles was the MC. Little John, who's the famous rapper, he DJ'd. Jermaine Dupri was the host. The mayor of Atlanta was there to send me off. I mean, every single who's who of Atlanta that was just about to bubble and burst was at my party to send me off. And that made all the local press, the cover of the daily paper, the Peach Buzz. I was on the radio, I was on TV, an amazing send off. So off I go to New York, and the first project that they give me is Gang Star's Hard to Earn album, which was Gangstar Premier and Guru's second album. And I was spearheading the promotion and marketing campaign for that. They gave me a British soul group called Eternal. They gave me another kind of more underground dance group that was part of Massive Attack. Her name was Shara Nelson. And then they gave me Billy Idol. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I have to say that people were not helping me along the way, because I think there were a lot of people that were like, who is this woman, this young woman? Like, what is her experience here? They just couldn't believe that I had this type of job. So there was no training. There was no training. I went in blind. I tried to get the help that I could. I went into meetings. I came from an independent, very entrepreneurial background in this career that I'd had, the short-lived career that I had. And I had never held down a real job that was of this level, of this magnitude. So it didn't make me feel good. It was very corporate. It was very suit and tie. I watched executives spending money, throwing $10 million up against the wall to see what would hit and what didn't. You know, threw out this money to do a video for $2 million. If it didn't stick, move on. It's a tax write-off. That's not me. I just felt like I'm not conditioned for this. I am not cut from this cloth. This is not making me happy. So you know what? I was there for about a year. I don't want to say that I came to them and said, oh, I'm quitting. They could probably tell it wasn't working out. They could tell that, you know, maybe I wasn't doing the best job in the world and my heart wasn't in it. And I came into work one day, they called me into the office and they said, listen, it's not working out. We're going to give you severance, wishing you all the best. So it was kind of like, you know, it was kind of like almost like a blessing in disguise, because I wasn't happy. But then I realized, holy shit, I'm in New York. I'm 27 years old. I don't really have the experience or connections to find out, you know, to figure out another job in New York. What am I going to do? So they gave me 2-week severance. And I figured, am I going back to Atlanta where everybody knows me and I can probably get a full-time gig again and just fall back into place, because it's only been like a year. But then I thought, ego, no way. That big goodbye party with like 400 people in the room of the who's who of Atlanta royalty, no way could I go back to that and look like I never made it in New York or I failed. No way could I had pride then, right? I had ego, I had the pride. I'm like, no, I'm determined to figure this out. So again, I think luck kind of came my way, because while I was a year at EMI Chrysalis, I was going out every night. I was at the clubs. I was at music venues. I was trying to make connections. I was meeting folks. And I got lucky enough to meet somebody that was the booker of this really hot rock and roll club in New York called Brownies. It doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, he was the talent buyer for Brownies. And he said to me, Fiona, I know a record label. He comes from Wall Street. It's an independent label. I can get you an interview over there if you want it. He's really looking for a publicist, and I think you'd be great. And again, I'd never really done PR on a national level. I've done the marketing for a year, so I know how PR works. I did the PR locally and regionally in Atlanta and Georgia and Birmingham, and I kind of knew the process. I knew, you know, the various mechanics of what publicity is and getting out press releases and building a buzz and getting profile and talking to media. I kind of knew how it worked. I just never did it on a national level. But hey, again, you talk the talk and you know, basically have enough confidence to get through the door, to get them to say, yes, you got the job. So that's what happened. It was an independent label called 0 Hour. Took my way in. I said, yes, I can do this. They believed in me. They loved my my hustle. They loved my personality. They loved my passion and my enthusiasm. As a matter of fact, that's gotten me through most everything. It's my passion and my enthusiasm. They can feel it. You feel that energy from miles away. I mean, you can probably feel it through this, you know, this online virtual event that we're doing right now, the lecture that I'm giving you now. You can probably feel the energy and the passion. You know, it speaks volumes. So I got the job. Again, I come from hip hop, even though I did rock and roll, you know, a few years before that, and classically trained and jazz and all of that. Here I am, back to rock and roll. So my heart wasn't really in it, but I just went through the motions. And I put this label on the map. I got my artists into Rolling Stone and Newsweek and, BBC and some of these top radio, KCRW and K-Rock and some of the biggest stations on radio and the biggest, media outlets you can imagine. This is now the mid-90s, right? And so major labels were like, how is this indie label getting more press than some of our major label artists? And honestly, the music was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. You got to have the product. You got to have the goods. But it was just me being relentless. It was me being on phones all day long, telling stories, being funny, showing up to things, taking people to lunch, mailing CDs with a fun letter, that you write, and just being goofy and fun and not taking myself too seriously. And the comedy in it all, making people laugh. And when people laugh, you sort of have them in the palm of your hands, right? You're building all these relationships based on your energy and your enthusiasm. And they start to trust you and they start to hear from you all the time. You're consistent with your calls. You're consistent with your, energy and passion and your pitch. And next thing you know, they're doing interviews with your artists. They're writing about your artists. They're showing up to shows. They're doing the live reviews. They're doing the previews. They're doing the features. So yeah, I just basically put 0 Hour on the map. So now we get to about 1998, 1999, before the internet boom. 0 Hour was really kicking ass. We were selling lots of records on the rock side. We were getting a ton of profile. Daniel Glass, who brought me to New York to begin with, came back into my life. I never really lost touch with him. I always kind of stayed in touch. That's the other key thing. You want to stay in touch. You want to stay in touch. You want to follow through with people. You always want to continue building and cultivating relationships. So I stayed in touch with Daniel Glass. And he said to me, hey, Fiona, I'm involved in this new venture with Doug Morris at the time, big CEO. He said to me, we're working on something new. It's called Rising Tide. We're basically acquiring independent labels. I know you've got the independent label you're working at. Is it good? Are you excited about the music that's coming out? And I was like, absolutely. You've got to check out what we're doing. So I brought Daniel Glass in with Doug Morris, with my boss. Now, I didn't have a whole lot of business savvy back then because truthfully, I should have been in that meeting. That was a meeting behind closed doors with the top level executives. I brought that meeting in. So even though I was not top level, I should have been in that meeting. I should have insisted that I was in that meeting. And because I wasn't in that meeting, I was not really privy to everything that went down. That was a 6-hour meeting. At the end of that meeting, it was a $10 million deal. Yeah, I got them a $10 million deal. 0 Hour with this company, Rising Tide, because they had deep pockets, endless amounts of money, huge investors, and it was crazy. So rather than getting a percentage of that deal, which really should have been 10% or 5% even, if you do the math, 10% or 5% would have given me about $800,000. Do you want to take a guess on the bonus my boss gave me? Because again, I wasn't savvy enough or didn't have the, the boldness enough to go in there and say, I need a finder's fee or I need a percentage of this. He gave me a bonus of, drum roll, $7,000. $7,000. That's nothing. But he did say to me, you are golden here. You can do whatever you want with this company. If you've got any ideas, you want to do anything, what would you like to do? And I told him, I want to start a label, a hip hop label. I want to start a label and I want to sign hip hop artists. And guess what? He let me. He gave me full reign, free reign. He said, do whatever you want. You've got X amount of budget per artist, per album. Get out there, go talent scout, do what you do best. And the first things I brought to him were Black Alicious, Cool Keith, Atmosphere, People Under the Stairs, Company Flow, like all these incredible underground artists that were really just very, very, very underground. And I was able, with our budgets and with my relentlessness and with all my savvy and PR and marketing and promotion and A&Ring and talent development and artist development, all of those things, I was able to break those artists and put them on the map. And it was incredible. And before we actually signed artists, I said to my boss, let me put out a compilation first. Let's kind of build the label. I called it 321 because the company was called 0 Hour. So 321. I said, let's kind of like introduce the label with this compilation. So I put amazing compilation of stuff together of like dub and hip hop and reggae and soul and beats and all these things. And I called it Connected, which I don't know if you can see that thing on my wall here. Where is it? Oh, is it up on my wall here? Do you see the artwork? Yeah, that right over there. This, I don't know if you see it at the end next to my piano thing. That was the art. I hired a graffiti artist to do the artwork for it. We started shipping hundreds of thousands of records across the world to retail. They could not keep those records in the stores. And then that's how I ended up signing Blackalicious and, you know, Company Flow. Big Just became my partner from Company Flow. And then the rest is history. And the reason why 321 didn't happen in the end and why we ended up closing its doors was not because the label wasn't successful. It's because 0 Hour had blown through all of their advances every year. The millions of dollars kept piling up that put us behind on recoups from the rock side of stuff that wasn't doing well. So the hip hop division was, but the rock side wasn't. So sadly, because I was only doing the hip hop side and because rock was the parent company, they ended up having to close its doors. And that was unbelievably devastating because I had artists on the road. I had artists finishing mixing albums. I had artists who were owed mastering engineers, needed to get paid. I needed to get paid. Artist A&R advances. I mean, it was talk about nightmare. I went into like deep, dark depression. This was in end of 1999, early 2000. And my partner, Big Just, he disappeared. Oh, actually, no, that was a little bit later. So remember Big Just from Company Flow. So I had to take a bit of a break. I wasn't making any money. I ended up going into hospital. There was so much stress. I was getting threats on the phone. We're going to kill you if you don't pay us the money that we're owed. We're chasing you down. We're hunting you down. And I ended up going into hospital with a tumor, you know, an cyst. And I was out of commission for 6 months. Now, while I was out of commission for 6 months, because I was still able to talk on the phone, and now you obviously the internet, you know, I had emails, I was still checking my emails. I just wasn't physically able to go anywhere. So while I was checking emails, there was an opportunity from a publisher of a magazine that said, Fiona, there is a money man, another money man, not from the 0 Hour money man, but a different money man that's with a company called Bear Stearns. He is interested in starting a hip hop label. I told him about you. He's very eager to meet you. So sure enough, we had phone calls. I think I did finally, when I was able to get out, I did finally fly out to meet him. He loved what I did with 321. He really believed in me. He said, let's start a new label. And he said, let's bring some of those artists that are owed money. He goes, I'll pay them off. I'll pay the mastering bills. I'll pay the mixing bills. We can, you know, what they didn't recoup, I'll pay for that. I'll pay the A&R advances, and let's start from scratch. Let's get a distribution company and build from the ground up again. So I called it Subverse. And one of the first artists we signed was MF Doom. We put out Operation Doomsday in 2000, and we literally must have sold around the world 1 million albums. It was incredible. Now, Subverse may have been here today if it wasn't for 9/11. The only reason we decided to like end Subverse was because of me. With Subverse, we had MF Doom, we had Blackalicious, we were putting out Scheme Team 12 inches, Cool Keith, you know, Ultramagnetic MCs, Pumpkinhead, Word of Mouth, like all these amazing underground MCs. And through that, I was also producing shows called Subversive School and bringing in all these rappers from California, from France, from Japan, from, you know, India. I mean, it was a really successful entity. And the only reason I ended up severing ties and saying I can't go on anymore was because 9/11 happened and our office happened to be 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. So very, very sad story. You know, our office was covered in ash for about 6 months. My partner, not the money guy, but my partner, Big Just from Company Flow, thought it was Nostradamus, because he's also Muslim and fourth percenter or whatever. I think it's six, whatever, the Muslim 6%er. He disappeared and thought it was Nostradamus. I couldn't get him on the phone. I disappeared. And between the two of us at the core of Subverse, without us being there, really Subverse with the money guy and a couple of interns and one retail guy, it wasn't going to survive. It wasn't going to survive without us. And I think they did try to keep it going till about 2002. And then that was it. It was over. After 9/11, you know, I tried to figure out again, I'm reinventing myself. What am I doing next? And I ended up doing just freelance consulting. I would go to Mid-Em every year and represent artists on their international business, setting up licensing deals, setting up distribution deals, getting them, you know, international booking agents, territory by territory, and just, it was basically hip hop labels. And I was making decent money doing that because Mid-Em was also doing really, really well. I started doing that at South by Southwest. I started doing that at CMJ. And whilst I was doing all of that, I also became a talent booker at a very, very, very popular club in New York called Joe's Pub Public Theater. So again, you see that I've had my hand in all of these different areas. And even though I'd never booked a venue before, they hired me because they knew that I had the A&R knowledge. They knew I had, you know, connections and relationships with managers, with agents. They knew that I could put programming together. They knew I knew how to promote. They knew that I would bring people in the door. They trusted, right? It's your passion, it's your energy, it's your confidence, it's your knowledge, but it's also their trust and their believing in you as well. And I took this amazing job at Joe's Pub. And my specific job was the late night programmer. So I was programming everything from midnight or 11 o'clock to 3 a.m. And I could do whatever I wanted. I could do a hip hop night. I could do an Indonesian night. I could do a Ukrainian night. I could do anything. They let me go with what I wanted to do. So when I would do stuff with Sweden, because I did a Swedish hip hop night, what I did with that was tap into the Swedish consulate. And so the Swedish consulate gave me some support, gave me promotion, introduced me to, you know, the export office in Sweden, introduced me to some really cool managers, introduced me to people that were like the biggest rappers in Sweden at the time, which were Loop Troop and Timbuktu and some of these other artists. So all of a sudden, they're all flying in and these shows are becoming huge, packed out. I mean, it wasn't a big venue, but it was like 350, you know, and I was just packing every single night, 11 p.m., queues down the street, just packing them in. And I love talent buying. It was a lot of work. I mean, I was exhausted. Can you imagine getting home at 4 a.m? And that was my side job because I'm still doing, you know, my PR hustle, and I'm still looking after artists and doing marketing and PR and everything else that came my way. So getting home at 4 a.m, I was still getting up at 9 or 10 o'clock, exhausting, but I'm 31, 32, so I'm still young, right? So the only reason I left Joe's Pub was because TVT Records at the time, which had 9 Inch Nails and Little John, who Little John knew me, and Pitbull and Yin Yang Twins and all these other groups, Seven Dust. So it was rock and roll, it was hip hop, it was R&B with Tidra Moses. It was all these amazing projects. TVT, the head of TVT, the president at the time, would always see me at Mid-Em, and he offered me a job. He said to me, you know, listen, I'm looking for somebody to run our international department at TVT, just somebody to run international. And I was like, and he's like, do you have any recommendations? That's basically what he said to me. Do you have any recommendations? I was like, I'll do it. So again, volunteering yourself, not being afraid to think, can you or can you not do this? So I was like, I'll do this. So I came in for the interview. He liked my energy. He said, let's give it a go. Well, TVT was a really horrible environment to work with. The people were lovely. The employees were lovely. But the top of command, he was brutal. I mean, I can say his name, Steve Gottlieb. I mean, people did not get along with Steve Gottlieb. He was known at the time. That's why I have no problem saying his name. He was known at the time as a tyrant, you know, dictator, tyrant, would throw chairs at people, would be screaming at the top of his lungs, just really, really scare you to death. I mean, just make you miserable and just give me heart palpitations, kind of like what EMI did, but it wasn't the heart palpitations at EMI. It was more like, I can't take this corporate throwing stuff up against a wall, seeing what stuck and what didn't, and more like the suit and ties. This wasn't so much suit and ties, but this was very much about the top people running it just were nasty people. And I just didn't want to do it to myself anymore. I'd already been in hospital, stressed from before, from 9/11 and, all this other stuff that was happening to me. And I just said, you know what? I need to be kind to myself. I need to put myself in situations where I love what I do. So I quit TVT, and again, I'm not quitting. I just decided it's not working out. And TVT actually were really good to me because the vice president was my day-to-day, who I had the relationship with, who I would go into like team meetings with, and he loved me. He said, Fiona, it's not working out because the president, Steve, doesn't like you. And he's like, I know you don't like him either. And so it was kind of a reciprocal, like, let's come to, an aha, come to Jesus moment. Like, yes, we realize we're both not happy here, right? So they gave me a really nice severance. They said, listen, you can actually stay until you find another job, or at least stay for a while till you figure out where you're going to go next. So rather than EMI Chrysalis giving me just 2 weeks, TVT now gives me 3 months. Now, during this 3 months, I'm already pretty well established now, right? You remember I moved to New York early 1994. This is now 2003, 2004, 2005. So it's a good solid 10 years in New York. So I am established. I'm not a huge executive, but I've got the track record that I work well. I do very well with artists from the ground up. I know how to develop artists. I know how to talent scout. I know how to discover raw talent. And I'm open and flexible and versatile to go in very different areas, right? So during all of that process, while I was figuring out what I'm doing next, another friend of mine who you stay in touch with, you have to stay in touch and cultivate these relationships. Another friend of mine who was actually an intern with me at 0 Hour and 321, who was now doing pretty well at another record label, found an opportunity in Sweden with looking for an A&R position in the US to run this Swedish company's operations in the US. He basically recommended me and they gave me the job. It sounds amazing to do A&R. The first thing was Snoop Dogg's brother, which sounds great, but in hindsight, Snoop Dogg's brother didn't have the talent Snoop Dogg did. Because if he did, don't you think Snoop Dogg would take him under his wings? So basically, I, took the job because the money was amazing. It was $9,000 a month, which was huge for me at the time. And again, short-lived because it was crap. They wanted me to go out and run around signing artists like Snoop Dogg's brother that just wasn't the passion or the drive or the thing that made me happy, right? So I ended up getting rid of the $9,000 job, the job. I ended up getting rid of it. And I said, you know what? I've done all these things. I've started 2 labels. I ran Subverse successfully. I ran 321. I did TVT. I did Joe's Pub. I did, local stuff. I did EMI Chrysalis. I did all these amazing things for training. I thought, I think it's time now that I start my own business. So now we're in 2007 and I started the Bloom Effect. And since 2000 to now, it's a one-stop shop. It's offering everything from marketing to PR to artist development to playlist promotion. You have to reinvent and adapt and readapt and go with like the technologies and the changes in the business. So of course I'm doing social media. Of course I'm doing playlist promotion, with the digital streaming platforms. Of course I'm doing fan engagement promotions. I'm working with AI companies. I'm working with 3D and mixed reality and virtual reality and all of these things. And all the clients, because of my, very versatile, broad background of loving all kinds of music, with the Bloom Effect, I'm doing jazz. I'm working with rock and roll. I'm working with reggae. I'm working with soul and R&B and roots Americana and international hip hop. And, I get to choose what I want to work, and it's agnostic genre-wise. As long as it moves me, as long as I feel like I can get behind it, I can work with it. So I've been doing successful campaigns for the Zombies and Simple Minds and Tower of Power and Gary Newman, all these different labels that hired me, BMG, Cooking Vinyl, some of these other indies like Mascot, Hopeville, like all these different labels who hired me basically give me these different projects. And it's whether it's an album campaign for press, or whether it's doing digital streaming promotion, playlist promotion, or whether it's putting together a strategy and a timeline for putting a record out, working from, 10 months ahead all the way back, or whether it's doing video promotion or artist development or international strategy. It's the various different things that I offer and the different services is what these labels decide, or these artists decide, well, this is what they want, this is what they need. And then they hire me for those campaigns. And, a lot of the indie stuff that I've been doing is on the Celtic side with Elephant Sessions and Talisk and the Langan Band. And then I started managing artists because, years ago I did manage. So I decided I can do management again. So I picked up a Welsh artist, Mali Huff. And then I picked up an old school artist that is back on track again called 5/8, which is a punk band from Athens, Georgia. Then I've got a brand new rock band from Quebec that I discovered last year at Canadian Music Week called Absolite. So it's a lot of talent and artist discovery and going on the road and doing conferences and doing festivals and getting, invited to speak and doing these panels and doing, these networking events, and even just going as a spectator or as an attendee, because you're constantly learning to continue your education and continue to grow your network and, the knowledge and experience. It never stops. So I realize we're sort of out of time in terms of opening it up to the floor too. You can see that I've had a very unorthodox journey, but the journey stayed consistent, and I never ever left the scene, even to go to a different area of the industry. I basically stayed in artist discovery. I stayed in artist development, but I just continued being open, and I continued offering services and reinventing myself and pivoting as the industry needs, with what you go for now, with the needs of like the artists wanting digital marketing, or digital advertising with Meta. I didn't know all that stuff, but I learned it as I went along, and I have all these things because of the pivot that I can do with my offerings that bring me to Web3, bring me to Web4, Web5, that make me invaluable as an executive, as an entrepreneur, building and continuing to grow the Bloom effect. So that's kind of where it all is. I mean, I've missed out so many cool anecdotes of industry stories of what it was like to meet Steve Stout or Jay-Z, or what it was like to, meet, to work with an artist that's on, with drugs and dealing with heroin and having to bail artists out of jail and having to, get stuck at airports with famous rappers. And, I haven't talked about all those fun things. But, that's a book. I'm writing a book as well, by the way. So when the book comes out, that's the book that you guys can buy and see all of that from reading all about it. So yeah, should we open that up to the floor? I think we should. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
First, to say thank you so much for sharing your story. I could relate to the first bit, because I also studied at the college. I studied piano, and it crushed my soul.
Yes, it can.
The teachers were critical, and you're never enough, never. So, and then later I also worked at the community radio as a host.
Yeah.
So a bit of a similar story there, but. I wanted to ask if we have questions in the room, because we have some questions online.
Yeah, I would imagine you've got to have questions. I mean, I know that, we wanted to pull out certain things, because obviously building a career from the ground up, you've got to talk about the publicity and the branding and, building that buzz and what's that story and what's that narrative, finding your voice, right? And then we talk about marketing strategy with the fan engagement and, the streaming platforms and radio and touring and merch and the local versus regional versus national marketing versus international marketing and developing those fan bases. And then the music creation, which is obviously as important, if not, is more important, really, but the other stuff is equally important. But the music creation, making sure you've got the right songs and the right style and the right aesthetic, and what is your genre, what is your style, and the craft of your style, and the, building that foundation and getting into the recording process and the collaborative aspect, and working with producers, and then working with engineers, and working with songwriters, and working with, mastering engineers, and deciding, well, are you ready to even be in the studio? Maybe you've got to develop and keep writing songs first and dissecting songs, and that's the artist development. And then you've got the team. When are you ready for hiring a manager or a publicist, or getting a label, or getting on tour, or having a booking agent? You may not even be ready for that at that point, right? So I know that those were all the points that I hoped I got through a little bit of that just by talking about throwing in some of my experience and what I did and my journey. But yes, if you've got questions about any of that stuff, feel free to let me know. Yeah.
I think we can fill in the gaps with this from the audience, so that should be great. Can I please ask you say your name, your background, what you're doing, and then your question?
Okay. Hello, Fiona.
Yes.
My name is Lek. I'm artist. My nickname is Good Vampire. I do EDM, dark pop, and the dance pop music. And it's pretty simple. As you're in the business for 30 years now, I'm really interested what has changed for last 5 years in this business. What has been changed? Because we have TikTok, we have a lot of other things, and how the new artists right now come up that has changed from the last years.
Okay. You're welcome. Let me just sip my water. That's a long question. That's a loaded question. Well, firstly, you say 5 years. Stuff is shifting as quickly as yesterday. That's how fast we're moving. What you did literally 6 weeks ago may or may not work today, 6 weeks later. That's how quick. So when you say 5 years, today's 5 years means 40 years, just to give you an indication. 5 years is like a century. It's a very long time. So I'm even going to go closer to that and say what's changed now. So people don't go out to shows as much anymore. There's no artist discovery in terms of talent scouting. They're not really discovering you live in the physical realm anymore. They are looking at scouring the web and looking at what is sticking with your monthly followers on Spotify. They're looking at how many streams your new single has all across the board. So not just Spotify, but they're looking at Amazon and Apple. They are looking to see, are you playing dates? They're not seeing your show, but they're looking to say, well, is the artist at least active? If not, well, is there a very healthy streaming history? So if there's not any of that, then they go to your socials, and they're looking at your socials. They're looking at your TikTok. Have you had any viral moments? Have you had your stories or your carousels or your reels getting thousands of views? And if that's no, then you don't have a chance in hell. There's no way anybody's going to discover you, unfortunately. There's no way. Whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you could be discovered with nothing. You could have a demo out, don't do any shows except just locally. You could have maybe put out 2 songs independently on vinyl or cassette, and you may have sold 50 at a show, and that was it. It didn't matter. If you didn't have a fan base, as long as you were great, as long as you had a great look and great sound, and the art and the package is there, they're going to sign you. They'd sign you. Now you could have a great package. You could be amazing. But if they don't see the numbers, the stats, the analytics, it's not happening. And the sad thing is about the analytics is a lot of it's artificial. A lot of it's bots still, even now, even with the crackdown, it's still, you don't know if it's real or fake. You just don't know. And, even if you are going out and doing shows, the artist is going to have a very difficult time making money at those shows, because a lot of these venues now are doing a pay to play. They're not taking care of the artist. It's because the venue can't stay in business because of what happened during COVID, and because the bigger artists are breaking the bank. the agents, the ecosystem's messed up. The ecosystem of the agents and the managers and the artists at that level asking for so much money that if the venue's going to do these shows, they're already broke doing those shows. They're just breaking even. So if they want to invest or take a risk on a small unknown artist, they can't. There's nowhere to pay you. So as much as we want to blame the venue and say, oh my God, it's pay to play, the venue sucks. It's not necessarily the venue sucks. It's actually that the venue can't stay in business. And, streaming is not paying bills. It's 0.0006 cents to a stream, which means if you get 1 million streams, you're going to get $5,000. That's nothing, because once you got the $5,000, you've got the royalties that you have to split with your distributor. You got to split with your manager. You got to split with the all of it. If you have an indie label, you've got all the different factors of splitting everything, and then you're left with, what are you left with? You're left with $2,000. And if you've got musicians that you pay or songwriters, and there's a point system with the songwriters, there's nothing left to pay, right? So this is the business that it's become. So even though it's an open level playing field and everyone can get in, unlike years ago, anyone and anyone can make a song, make a record. In your bedroom, you can be nobody. I could put out a song about a cat and it could go viral. Great, it's gone viral, but nobody still is really making the money. The real money is being made if you get a sync deal to a film, TV, or gaming, a synchronization, placement, or if you are on the road and you're selling merch. Those are the two, still to this day, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, today, those are the places you're going to make your money. The rest, forget it. Even if you had that viral moment, yes, your name means something now, but you're not making any money streaming. So I hope that answered your question, because that was a very loaded question. Did it answer your question?
Yeah, it's so good. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions in the room? You can think for now. I have 2 questions online. So the first question is how to find international label for distribution and booking, and maybe a booking agent in the US while staying in Ukraine.
Well, again, it's not, you've got to, I always like to say you've got to show up. Half the battle is showing up, being in the room, showing up. So my honest answer to that, if a Ukrainian artist really is serious about this, you are willing to make some kind of investment if you want world domination, if you want a booking agent, if you want a label or a distribution deal of some sort, other than, regular World Wide Web distribution, which is streaming, which you're not going to make any money at. Because you can put your music out, it's worldwide. You can go to CD Baby, TuneCore, Believe distribution, Empire. You can go anywhere. You've got distribution. You just tick off the territories, but it doesn't mean a thing. So my answer to that is a Ukrainian artist either needs to take advantage of going to South by Southwest, or a new Colossus, or a Mondo, which I'm a partner in Mondo, which is a music business conference in October in New York. You have to show up. You have to get on a plane. You have to be in the room, and you have to meet these people to establish the relationship, to share your music, follow up, and then work those, relationships, which will in turn get you the deals that you're looking for. And then you have Ukrainian government or Ukrainian support or Ukrainian, institute or America, house or the Portugal, or whatever the places you're putting on these lectures. You can find some support or some sort of government or grant if you get South by to be able to give you a subsidized, portion of that to bring you out. I know other countries, I'm sure Ukraine has it now. I know it's a little tricky in Ukraine now because it's technically, you're in still the war zone and it's, the things is still very volatile. But if you're in a different territory, Czech Republic, for example, that's how it works.
Thank you. Another question, are there any courses in music management that you would recommend online or at the university?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Music management courses. Okay, I'll tell you right now that I think you can belong to this because it's also a worldwide organization. It's called the International Music Managers Forum. International Music Managers Forum. You can find it on the web. It's available to anybody to sign up. They have forums, they have education seminars, they do webinars, they do networking events, they do things locally. Again, I don't know if it's in Ukraine, but they do it locally in Europe. They do it in the UK. It's very heavily based in the US, and they do these summits. So I would look to start there. As far as courses, management courses, Berklee School of Music has a management course that you can take. There are books on music management. I mean, there's not I don't recall an actual music management book, but there are the business of music books that are out there. There's so many books I can send you, if you want, I can give you down, I can send you an email, Irina, you can send to everybody about I can give you like 10 to 15 recommendations of different books that are out there of the business of music, but there's loads of those that I would recommend. And then there is, just the best schools out there are the Syracuse University, which is the Bandier program. That's a really, really good one. The Clive Davis Institute has a school of recorded music, has a really good business program as well. And then, the International Music Managers Forum, if you're looking specifically on the management side. Those would be the suggestions. And then, going to conferences, going to some of these networking events. A lot of these conferences do offer up Zooms that are, registrations that you can do virtually, that you can sign up on online. The Grammy Recording Academy has an online Zoom that you can sign up for. There's stuff in the UK that I know that they do for music business programs that you can sign up for. And again, books, I can give you some suggestions on books. I just can't think of them off the top of my head right now, the good ones, but I can certainly send you some suggestions and recommendations.
Thank you so much. We have one question online. So as an artist, not a manager, you've just said about like so many points to take care of, like management, publicizing, being in touch with your audience, and so many other points. How not to get lost as an artist and all of that? And what would you advise to focus on mainly?
So you're the artist, and I assume you're putting out music independently. First and foremost, you've got to focus on making great music. I mean, that is the most important thing. There's a lot of distractions out there, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And everybody's telling you, yes, you've got to be on TikTok all day long. Yes, you've got to do Reels. You've got to do this. You've got to be on YouTube. You've got to be on Twitch. You've got to be on, fan engagement. You've got to do a crowdsourcing campaign. You've got to book, tours, book shows. I would concentrate on putting out the best, writing, collaborating, finding some like-minded artists like you, like yourself. I don't know who the artist is, what sort of genre, but I would find other like-minded artists that are also sort of in the same level as you. Befriend them. It could be anywhere in the world. Find them on Facebook or TikTok, or do hashtags to find these artists on Reddit or SoundCloud. There's all these different sub-communities. You can find them. And when you find these artists, or even find them on playlists on Apple or, Spotify, Discovery lists, whatever they are, they're out there. And once you find these lists and you go to an artist that's like-minded, see if they'd be willing to do a collaboration with you. And you don't have to even travel to do it. The technology is so advanced in this day and age that you can record, the process can be recording, doing the parts online, and then just submitting them, via a wave, online. You can do all of that with the recording process virtually. It's amazing what you can do today with technology. So I would make the best possible songs, whether it's a co-write, a collaboration, or just you on your own. Once you feel really, really great about the song and you're ready to unleash it, then I would get a really strong visual together, because the visual is just as important as the song. You need something that people are going to see, that fans are going to be blown away by. This is whether it's a video, or whether it's, short form content, whether it's, visual, whether it's an art campaign or a cover art or single art or poster art or, postcard or cover art, whatever that is, has to look amazing. And once you know you have all of that in play, then focus on the social media aspect that you do the best with. Maybe you're good at TikTok. Maybe TikTok's actually the platform for you. If it is, focus on TikTok. Don't try and focus on 5 or 6 platforms. I know you have to be on them, but really put your energy on the one that is taking off. The one that you have 1,000 followers on or 500 followers on. Maybe you only have 50 on Facebook. Maybe you only have 60 followers on Facebook, but you on Instagram, but you have your TikTok channels, 2,000 views on videos, and you have 350 followers on TikTok. Then go to TikTok. Go where the love is and do it every single day with wild videos. Like, don't think too heavily about, oh, I've got to do a viral video, but just think about in your head, what could be fun? Just have fun with it. Have fun with the music. Have fun with your personality. Have fun with the visuals. Have fun with the artwork. Have fun with the creative. Have fun, even if it's a walk in the park with your dog or smelling a flower. It doesn't always have to be music driven. With TikTok, the beauty of TikTok is anything takes off. You just never know. It's all about the timing, being at the right moment. Anything can take off. And if you happen to love pets, let us see your pets. If you happen to love cooking, let us see you do a recipe. If you love traveling and you're getting on another plane or you're driving to the next city, even if it's not on a tour doing your shows, but maybe it's a tour doing gardening, or maybe you're on the way to birdwatch. I mean, whatever it is, let's see those TikTok videos, right? Let's see that. So gravitate to the one that's showing you love, the one that's really taking off. And as you start to have the best songs and your social media is starting to happen, then start to think about your fan base and start doing shows locally in that market and get hundreds of people in the room locally. And as you get them local, get a QR code up on the screen so people can be like posting while you're doing stuff, and send them to your fan page and send them to your merchandise. And, be creative with your merch so that you can not just sell merch at the table, but you're selling merch online, but you're staying focused locally. And as you start to do that and you're really building that base, it's not overwhelming if you stay local. Then you'll start to see the outreach coming from different places. So that's my best recommendation for that.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions in the room? Yes.
Hey, Fiona. My name is Mark, and I really don't have a question. I want to give you a little feedback. I'm a salesperson and self-taught musician, and I heard your many shared, and I'm personally looking forward to reading your book. Please publish it.
I'm looking forward to writing my book. I barely scraped the surface. Honestly, my background is like, it's just, there's a lot, right? So it's hard to kind of dissect it and put it all into 1 hour because of so many different, huge, people, executives, interns, artists, bands, labels, and personalities that I've affected along the way. It's just a lot to unpack in one hour. And I probably should find a way of better, conveying it, but it's hard when you're doing it on a screen. I think it's a little easier if I was in the room, because I could kind of feel off your energy and, maybe have something on the blackboard I could write up, rather than share a screen. Because I'm not, with the sharing screen stuff, you always have to rely on technology. When you're relying on technology, sometimes it fails, right? But when you're in the room and you've got it right there, it's going to work, right? So I look forward to coming in person someday.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. We have one more question from online about building a team. So how do you know from only one meeting that it's your person, the person that has to be on your team? Do you have any tips?
So you're talking about the artist. When do they know? Obviously, yes. Again, you have to have a little bit of a story happening. I mean, with Mali Huff from Wales, I discovered her last year at Breakout West in Saskatoon. She came out because Focus Wales brought her out on a stage at Breakout West. And I saw the show and I loved it. She had nothing going on, really. I mean, she wasn't even big in Wales. I mean, she she was barely bringing 50, 60, 70 people to her shows in Wales. But I knew she was cool. And it was soon, and some people thought I was crazy because they were like, you're picking her up now? There's nothing going on. But I'm also good at creating things from nothing, as we talk about building careers from the ground up. Not everyone's in a position to be able to do that. I happen to be good at that. Do I like to do that? Not always, because it's so challenging. So I tell the artists they're not always ready to have the manager until there's something going on. And when I mean something going on, it means, having at least 5 to 10 shows that you've done, having 2 or 3 singles that you put out yourself that have at least had 2,000, 3,000 streams each, having at least a monthly, listenership of like maybe 1,000 or 600 monthly listeners. And, knowing that you have a fan base of people that are spreading the word about you, even if it's just 200, those are your cheerleaders. Unless you've got that base that you've done yourself, it's way too soon to hire a publicist or bring somebody on as management or even get a booking agent. It's not too soon to get somebody to help you with administrative stuff, and help you with social media and help you create content and bring a videographer out to your shows or behind the scenes so they're constantly creating content. That's always a good idea. But the reason I took Molly on, she had nobody. She was self-managed. She had a small little indie label she was working with that nobody'd heard of, just based in Wales, that hadn't really done anything. But the reason I decided to take her on internationally was because I saw something very unique. She sang in English, but she also sang in Welsh. She also brought props on stage. She danced. She's like an amazing dancer. She incorporated her vocals with the dancing. She had a really cool configuration of vocals, dancing, props, lighting projectors, female drummer, and a bass player. And so just the 3 of them, but making a lot of noise for 3 with a lot of stuff going on. Had I not seen the show live, I would never thought to bring her on. I wouldn't be discovering her online. And if I did discover her online, she had nothing going on with social media. She had 200 Instagram followers. She hadn't really done anything on TikTok yet. She had no booking agent. She had no fan base even in Wales. She had no streaming. Her streaming was maybe 75 monthly listeners on Spotify. It was crazy. But I was able to build her up 6 months later into 2,500 monthly listeners. We're almost at 6,000 Instagram followers. She won the talent competition with Glastonbury. So she went to Glastonbury. Now I got her a UK booking agent. So she's doing a tour we just announced in the UK in October. Then we're going to take her to Europe. I submitted her to certain conferences. We submitted her to Suns Europe, which is in Italy, a European language conference. I submitted her to South by Southwest. I submitted her to M for Montreal, Tallinn Music Week in Estonia. We submitted to Iceland Airwaves. Your Roots are showing in Iceland. But otherwise, it's a bit of an exception because most people aren't doing that. Most people have to find that there's some kind of base, some kind of story before you want to bring on a team member. So my suggestion to you is forget about the team right now. Bring on somebody that's creating and helping you with your content so that's great. Bring on somebody that that's a videographer, photographer, and somebody that helps you with your administration stuff. Yeah.
One more question, maybe one of the last ones.
Yeah.
Oh, one more. So they are popping up in YouTube. When we have a manager who works with classical music, what is the difference, like when it comes to classical music to management? So if you're managing a solo performer,
what's the difference? I don't see a difference, to be honest. That's why I approach this I think that's why I'm successful in what I do, because the only difference is it's obviously more niche, right? Classical music's not going to have a easy time breaking through, but there's always exceptions like Yang Yang and Yin Yang, what's his name again? Yang Lang and Yo-Yo Ma and, Luciano Pavarotti. Like there's classical artists or opera singers that are going to really break the mold and just break through and become like massive stars, right? In classical music, massive stars. It's possible. It's harder, but it's possible. So I don't see a difference, because if I had someone like Yo-Yo Ma, who's a cellist, who's a brand new Yo-Yo Ma, who's playing with the Austrian Philharmonic, or, you know, in Prague doing a couple of dates, or he's in the concert hall with the London Philharmonic, or he's just doing chamber, you know, recitals, or he's not even doing anything yet. It doesn't matter to me. I'm still going to look for an agent that specializes in classical music. And if it's too soon for the agent, I'm going to tell the yo-yo guy, I'm going to say to him, let's say his name is, you know, say her name is Julie Child. I'm going to say to Julie, I need you to be consistent on your TikTok. I need you to get your streaming numbers up. I need you to create content. I need you to be cool with this visual stuff. I need a cool single. I'm going to treat it the same. It's niche, but we're treating it the same. The mechanics, the process, the marketing, the promotion, the PR, none of that changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The last question from online. What is your advice for those Ukrainian artists that found themselves abroad as refugees? Now, how to build your base and team? She is in Austria now, in a small city of Graz, and sometimes she feels lost.
Okay, can you repeat the first part, because you got cut off? I only heard the end of it. Yeah.
What's your advice for those Ukrainian artists that found themselves abroad as refugees?
Yeah.
How your base and team? So she says, I'm in Austria, in a small city of Graz, and sometimes I feel lost.
Yeah, well, she's not, well, first of all, I mean, yes, she's a refugee, so of course she's going to feel lost, because she's not really acclimated, or she might feel a little disenfranchised because it's not her country and her roots. But, you know, and the language obviously too, but I'd say, you know, it's everyone, it's not just her, like there's a million artists who feel lost. So firstly, she's not alone, right? She's not alone. And secondly, she's got to keep her dream alive, and she has to not give up hope, and she has to just work as hard as she is creating and thinking and dreaming, and just not letting that dream die, just adding fire to the fuel, and trying to maybe get some grants because she is a refugee, or trying to get some governmental help or some organizations that work with refugees, right? Because there's, here in America, I mean, there's a lot of assistance for refugees, and, you know, there's, you know, Oxfam is doing great work. I mean, there's Music United. I mean, there's so many organizations that want to help and give assistance, and there's government programs, and then there's other artists that have been in those shoes that will assist. So I would just say, do as much outreach as you can. And the feeling lost, just know that yourself, you're not the only one. That even if we're not refugees, even just being an artist sitting in the room now today, artists every day, all day long, feel lost all day long. Is my message coming across? Should I be doing it this way? Did it translate? Did people understand me? Am I, you know, I think I just embarrassed myself. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have done this way. I don't know. I've run out of ideas. I don't know how to do that. Everybody at all levels, especially from the ground coming in, everybody's feeling lost. Maybe they're not admitting it to anyone, but to themselves, everybody's feeling in your shoes. The only difference is you had to flee, you know, the Ukraine to start over. And so it's a little bit more challenging for you, but it's the same, right? It's challenging just a little bit more. But with the challenge, I would think that drives you to do things harder, drives you to make a statement, to be more vocal, or to do the more work, or to be more creative, or show people that you can get through things, you know, during the hardships or during the worst times, right? That's when actually people do fly, is when you're at your hardest time, you're at rock bottom, but you manage to then find a way. That's when the beauty and the magic happens. So I say, do it. Don't get lost. Don't feel lost. Get out of your head and just keep going and be excited. Do not lose the faith, and your break and your shine is coming. You are shining, and that your dream is going to happen, and you just got to keep that belief going, and eventually it will. That's my advice to you.
Thank you. And I think the last question will be from me.
This has to be the last question because then I have to jump. Because
yes, of course, yeah. So I just wanted to ask, there is, I think in Ukraine and maybe all over the world, this like tendency of when there is an artist, when artist starts, they like play and they exist for like a year or two, then they get disappointed that they put in so much, you know, like money, their like investments and everything, and they don't get back as much as they expected. They get disappointed and they stop making music. Do you have any advices on like making your career sustainable and bounce back after being disappointed by the industry?
Oh my goodness, there's so many disappointments. I mean, this business is one disappointment after the other. So A, you've got to have thick skin, and B, you have to look at this as the end game and long term. And you cannot look at this necessarily about the end result. You have to look at the journey. It's not about the destination. I tell everybody, it's not the destination. It's not about there. It's about the journey. So every single thing along the way, even if it's not sustainable at the moment, you've got to find a way to keep it going. Whether it's investments, whether it's, you know, a side hustle, right? Because every artist I know that doesn't have a lot of money right now does have a side job. It's okay to have a side job and do the music thing, you know, hustle the music. It's called hustling, right? The hustle. And, you know, as far as trying not to get disappointed, as I said, you could be in the business 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I've been doing this 35 years and I still get disappointments. I'm still dealing with disappointments. Every period of time, there's a disappointment. So unfortunately, that never goes away. You have to test yourself. The test to you is, are you up for it? Can you handle the challenge? Is this really for you? Do you have the thick skin? Do you have the patience and the stamina and the endurance to really do this by all means necessary? If you do not, then this job, this career, this artistry, this lifestyle is not for you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Let's give a round of applause to Fiona.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, guys. I hope everybody benefited something from this, and I hope your online participants also got something out of the chat as well.
Yes, we'll definitely share this lecture online as well afterwards. And if you have the recommendation, like books, anything to think about, just let me know and I'll send it around.
Absolutely. I will be happy to do that. Give me a couple days, but I'll get it to you by Monday.
Thank you so much and have a lovely Friday.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your summer, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Bye.